Hi, this is Nicole Smith, and this is my slideshow on subsistence and how it is more than just food. Unlike our society where food is simply eaten, food in the Alaska Native cultures has many different purposes, beliefs, statuses, and is a part of our culture in huge ways. The Alaska Native peoples face many difficulties when it comes to food, whether it is incorporating non-traditional foods into their diets, contaminants in the food, or impacts on the climate change on the animals. For example, in the Tlingit culture, food such as shellfish conveys a person's status and role in the community. They not only provided nutrients, but the shells were also used to make many utensils. The shells from mussels are used to create knives. Clamshells were often used for spoons or containers. And in two cases, dentalium and abalone were traded widely and were once a form of currency. Also, like many other animals, shellfish were associated with symbolic and social meanings. When one dreamt of silver salmon, the moon, sun, or stars, they all signified good luck. While dreaming of a bear, blood, devilfish meant an upcoming accident or misfortune. And dreaming of clams often indicated poverty. This is because early on in their lives, men are taught to avoid shellfish and focus on hunting and fishing, which will cause them to have fortune and status in the village. This correlation between shellfish and laziness seems to come from the abundance of shellfish and how easy they are to gather and prepare. Men who collected shellfish showed the community that they were reluctant to work hard and collect any wealth. There were exceptions, however. If someone was new to the village, it was acceptable for them to collect and gather shellfish. Um, this here is a picture of partner researchers sorting and processing subsistence shellfish in the Alutiiq Pride shellfish hatchery. To the left is a early 20th century picture of a woman dip netting, and to the right is an Alaska Native woman preparing salmon ready to be hung up and dried. Another problem with food the Alaska Native peoples have is the incorporating of non-traditional food and traditional food. Um, Many of the Alaska Native communities are experiencing an influx of buying canned goods rather than subsistence. In particular, we will look at the Inuit communities of the Arctic Circle, specifically the Inuit of Nunavut. They have many problems with this because many people from their communities are getting jobs with higher salaries. And the community has a value of sharing, so food does not belong to one particular person but to everyone. Um, People often find themselves trapped by the system, especially those who have good salaries. They often end up feeding more and more people from the community and not receiving anything in return. And to escape the system, many of these people simply quit their jobs. Um, we'll talk about Luki, who was from a prominent family in this community. She ends up feeding many people from her community and providing food gifts throughout the community. And more often than not, Aluki does not have enough food to feed her own family because there's so many people helping her themselves to her pantry. To fix her problem, Aluki canceled her annual shipment from Montreal to keep her cupboards as bare as possible. She then buys groceries on a daily basis, which is more expensive, from the local store. She then buys enough to feed herself, her family, and any extended family if they happen to stop by. This works out for her, aside from the spending more money on buying groceries on a daily basis, um, because if she simply runs out of food to feed her community, she will not be considered stingy, which no one wants in this community. If she just denied people food, she would be considered stingy and lose standing in the community. Another problem about incorporating non traditional foods with traditional foods is that many of the traditional foods are no longer a part of their diets. Foods such as seal, sea otters, and whales which have been overhunted in the past, now only make a minor part in some Alaska Native cultures' diet compared to the large part they once had. Um, in particular, the Aleuts used sea mammals for many other uses than food, to make clothes, containers, their oils from their bodies. Although in today's society, the killing of a sea mammal is considered to be a delicacy and is shared with all the community members. Whales were also once considered to be common marine animal to the Aleuts. The whales were valued for their flesh as their blubber. Uh, while rarely hunted today, a beach whale not too far into decomposition you will often find its blubber stripped in a 2-foot sections. The traditional foods mostly came in when the Russians came in contact. Um, Aside from bringing in food and almost causing extinctions to our seals, otters, and whales, um, the Russians also brought an increasing rate of dental issues. This was because the availability of sugar once they came. Um, it is currently estimated that the average Aleut consumes 25 pounds of sugar per person per month. So this causes many unhealthy habits and dental issues. Um, Another factor which causes the Alaska Native people to incorporate more non traditional foods into their diets is the increase of contaminations found in their traditional foods. Um, Atmospheric currents often contaminate much of the traditional foods of the Alaska Native cultures in the northern environment. These foods are often problematic due to the local contamination as well as the contamination outside from the local environment. Um, the local contaminants are often due to local industrial activities, including mining or the use of pesticides. This contamination can be seen throughout the air, freshwater, seawater, snow, sediments, bird, fish, plants, and terrestrial and sea mammals. Some chemicals such as lead, arsenic, mercury, and cadmium, to name a few, can accumulate in these species, and once one animal in the food chain gets this contamination, it affects all the others. Um, the levels of contamination depends on many different factors, including the species of the animals, the age, and the location. Animals who are older and larger tend to have more contaminants than the younger animals. Um, and exposure to these contaminants can cause severe injuries in the bodies. While lifetime effects of long-term exposure of these metals at low doses in the Alaska Native cultures is unclear, it's important for us to see the potential threats to these people. Um, for example, someone who has been exposed to mercury for a long time can potentially have brain damage, kidney damage, and or failure. In a woman's case, it can cause permanent damage to a developing fetus. Long-time exposure to arsenic can cause injury to the liver and neurotoxicity. The effects of lead contamination can especially be seen in children. These effects can be seen in the nervous system, the blood cells. Many of these children in these cases are anemic, and damage to their kidneys. Cadmium also affects the kidneys in those who have been exposed to it. This damage to the kidneys from cadmium can also lead to many different bone disorders. Uh, so here are some pictures of subsistence hunting. In picture one, the above one, a seal hunter returns to Nome from the sea heist. It was in the 1930s, and below it is the Alaska Natives using a tow line to haul a bowhead whale carcass onto ice, following a subsistence whale hunt near Barrow. Aside from the incorporating of non-traditional foods and traditional foods and contaminations in their foods. Alaska Native cultures also face the difficulties of climate change. This climate change in Alaska has greatly impacted the Alaska Native subsistence users. On average, the winter temperatures in Alaska have increased 5 to 7 degrees in the last 60 years. While it doesn't seem like a drastic change, it's about triple the change which has been experienced in the equator. This climate change drastically hurts the animals and their habitats, either causing them to die out or migrate somewhere else. Let's see. So above is a picture of a walrus on ice in the Chuyak Sea in Alaska. You can see how little ice is left available. And below is the Penderson Glacier. The picture to the left is between the 1920s and early 40s, and the picture on the right is from August 2005. So you can see just how drastically our environment has changed. Um, for example, aside from the pictures, the boreal forests in the north are expanding 62 miles for every 1.8 degree rise in the air temperature. The caribou, which depend on these tundra, will ultimately die during this change, which will drastically hurt the Alaska Native peoples. They depend on the caribou meat to help them survive. Uh, Also, the rapid decrease of the sea ice greatly impacts those who whale for food. While it's not often, there are some communities in the north who rely on these whales. The whales now arrive earlier, they go further out. The shore ice is often brittle and makes it difficult for the whalers to find a place to process the whales. New bases must be found, so that's more expensive relocation. The waters are more rough and dangerous. More fuel is needed for the boats. And bigger / more boats are needed for safety reasons. So ultimately, it is costing the Alaska Native peoples much more money to continue subsistence hunting with the Alaska climate change. Here is also a picture of Alaskan yellow cedars, which are dying due to the climate change. Um, so these pictures really show how much our climate has changed, and it's unfortunate to see it change. And in order for us to be ready for this and to help the Alaska Native peoples, we need to understand just how important subsistence food is to them. Here we go. Thank you.